everyone. Pascal actually introduced my team already, but you forgot one person. Eline van Asche is also in my team. She's currently working from the UK, from London actually. And I'm very grateful that she also supervises me because she has a lot of knowledge on qualitative research. But going back to the title, mentoring in academic medicine, understanding its process and improvising its practice. So the current situation and basically what led up to the study is, the current situation is there are mentoring programs that are implemented in the medical education, but also in youth mentoring and in workplace mentoring. So that's the situation right now, and that has been done because mentoring research has exploded over the last three decades, and overwhelmingly it reports benefits for mentees, but also for the mentors. But if you look at the benefits, there's also a lot of research on that. The benefits only occur and are dependent on the degree mentors and mentees experience mutuality, trust, and empathy in that relationship that they have. This leads to our study today. We need a better understanding of those interactions. So I'm going to go over that in a minute. Because that's what current literature focuses on. It focuses a lot on the input factors that make mentoring successful, on contextual factors, on outcomes, but it neglects the process. So what is actually happening in day-to-day interactions between mentors and mentees in an academic setting? And there are two gaps in the literature that this project wants to address. The first one is task perception of both mentor and mentee. So there was a lack of research that includes both perspectives into one project. Usually they focus on either the mentee or the mentor. But actually relationships are built on mutual work. So just like any other relationship or friendships, both need to invest. Task perception means the subjective interpretation of guidelines. So although formal mentoring programs will have guidelines on what is supposed to happen, every person will have their own interpretation of what that actually means in practice. So we want to look at that in the first step, and afterwards we want to develop an in-depth analysis of day-to-day interactions. I will also use positioning theory, just like Annelies. Second project today will use that. And the project has basically two aims. First of all, we want to develop that in-depth understanding of mentoring interactions. So what happens exactly between mentor and student in those day-to-day interactions. And second of all, we want to improve the mentoring practice, the current one. Because what's research worth if we don't actually improve something in real life? And we're going to use, to develop that in-depth understanding, we're going to use positioning theory. It's quite a complex theory, and it's not that easy to explain within a minute. But basically it was based on role theory that assumed in social interactions you have relatively fixed roles. Let's say professor-student. It was based on that, but it goes beyond that. So it also means those roles within a conversation are up for change and are contestable. So it does account for dynamics of interactions and changing character of mentoring. I think you know that yourself. If you talk to someone and maybe they say something you didn't expect, and suddenly your perspective on that person changes a lot, and everything that person said suddenly is in a different light. That's what positioning theory can give meaning to. So it can give meaning to why and what people say in conversations, and that's called the positioning triangle. As I said, the theory is a bit too complex to explain it in a minute. But basically, there are three factors that influence your position within a conversation. The first one is rights and duties. So what do you feel like you're obliged to do in a conversation, and what are your rights to do in a conversation? An example would be you're obliged to listen to your professor, or the professor has the right to interrupt their students when they feel like they're wrong. Illocutionary force means how much does what you say actually weigh. So depending also on your position, if you're a professor, whatever you will say, or if you have a reputation, that will have a higher weight compared to that person who doesn't have any meaning in that situation. And storylines, It's a hard concept to explain, but storylines basically means it's kind of an overarching social expectation of what is supposed to happen in interactions. If you look at a storyline, an example would be the ACO Master at this university, or the Bachelor of Medicine, or another program, for example. So we will use that theory to actually develop that in-depth understanding, and that led to 4 research questions. The first one is going to zoom into the task perception. How do mentors and mentees perceive their tasks in the mentoring process? This will also serve as a base for the second research questions. How do mentor and mentee position themselves in their interactions? So we're going to look at those interactions between mentors and mentees. The third research question is, are discursive patterns, which we discovered in the second study, of mentor-mentee interactions different in the 4th year of the ARCO program compared to the first year? So the reason behind that is the expectation is that conversations obviously will change over the course of 4 years. In the ARCO Master, you have one mentor for 4 years, and the first year conversation is expected to be very different to a 4th year conversation, because students are more independent, they're close to entering the workplace, they have clerkships, and then those 3 are to build the knowledge, and in the 4th study we would actually like to use that knowledge to improve the existing mentor training, because that's where we have an influence as educational researchers. So what components does a training for mentors need to contain to increase the mentors' awareness about those subject positions and discursive patterns that we discovered in study 2 and 3? That's an overview of the studies. One line means one study. So the goal of the first study is to capture mentors and students' task perception. We're going to do that by conducting narrative semi-structured interviews. Narrative semi-structured means we have room within that interview to actually go with the flow of conversation, because we want to capture the story and the perspective of mentor and mentee. We're going to conduct it in the ARCO Master. We're aiming for 15 to 20 participants, but also accounting for the fact that there are more students than mentors. So we will interview more mentees than mentors, but obviously we will go on until saturation is reached. And at the outcome, it should be a layout of mentors and students' task perception. This is explorative, so we will have to see how that looks like after that. What was that? The second goal of the second study is to identify discursive patterns in mentor-mentee interactions, and that basically means we're going to look at how do conversations, how's the flow of conversations, A says that, and positions himself as, as dominant, and then B positions himself as submissive or something like that. We're going to use audio recordings of mentor-mentee interactions. The ARCO is a very, very structured program when it comes to the mentoring process. So they have quite regular meetings. And we're going to record those for at least 12 pairs in the first year of the ARCO. And then subject positions and a typology of discursive patterns. It's the result. Study 3 is a repeat of study 2. But now the only difference is we're going to look at interactions in the 4th year of the ARCO. And then we would have the same results as in study 2 for a different year, and we're going to compare those. Once we've done that, in the 4th study, we want to identify and design components to add to the existing mentor training. So there is a mentor training already, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we want to add to that. By actually using results from study 1 to 3, a literature search on the most effective components of trainings, and also interviews with stakeholders in the mentor training to see their perspective on our results, but also on how to implement them. So participants are obviously stakeholders in the mentor training, and at the end we would like to have components that we can add to the existing mentor training to improve practice and to generate positive experiences for all students, not just a few. Thank you very much. That's my research. If you have any questions, you can ask me later or tomorrow or any day. Thank you.